A Colorado blizzard turned Evelyn Hart's isolated homestead into a frozen tomb. Food ran out. Fire died. The orphaned boy she sheltered burned with fever while wind tore through gaps in the walls like claws. Then a stranger appeared, massive, silent, dangerous, begging shelter from the storm that killed everything it touched. She could let him in and risk murder. She could turn him away and guarantee his death. Either choice felt like damnation. But when armed men came claiming her land, when bullets shattered her windows and hands dragged her into darkness, that same dangerous stranger became the only thing standing between her and oblivion. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. And hit that like button before we begin. The wind didn't howl. It screamed. Evelyn Hart pressed her shoulder against the cabin door, boots sliding on ice that had crept beneath the threshold during the night. Outside, the blizzard moved like something alive. Furious, endless, swallowing the Colorado landscape until there was nothing left but white and cold, and the certainty of death for anything caught in it. "Miss Evelyn?" Noah's voice came thin from the corner, barely audible over the storm's rage. She didn't turn around. Couldn't. The door shuddered against her weight, and if she moved even an inch, the wind would tear it from its hinges and flood the cabin with snow and killing cold. "I'm here, Noah." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Just stay wrapped up." The boy was 7, maybe 8. She'd never gotten a straight answer about his age before his mother died 3 months back. Fever had taken the woman fast, and with no other family and winter closing in, Evelyn had made the only choice her conscience allowed. Now Noah huddled in blankets near what remained of their fire, shivering despite the layers, his skin too pale and his breathing too shallow. The fever had started 2 days ago, same way it started with his mother. Evelyn finally secured the bolt and turned back to the cabin's interior. One room. Rough timber walls chinked with mud and moss that let in drafts no amount of patching could stop. A stone fireplace that ate wood faster than she could feed it. Shelves that had held preserves and dried meat and flour. Until they didn't. She'd rationed everything, done the math a dozen different ways. It didn't matter. The storm had been raging for 6 days and they'd run out of food yesterday morning. "Are you hungry?" she asked, knowing the answer, hating herself for asking. Noah shook his head, but his eyes, dark and too large in his thin face, told the truth. The kid had learned not to complain. Learned it from a mother who'd worked herself to death trying to make a life out of nothing, and now he was learning it again from a woman who had no idea how to keep him alive. Evelyn crossed to the fireplace and fed it the last 2 logs from the dwindling pile beside the hearth. The flames caught grudgingly, giving off more smoke than heat. She'd need to go outside soon, to the woodshed, if she could even find it in the whiteout. The thought made her stomach clench. Her husband would have handled this. Tom had been good at survival, good at reading weather, good at preparing for disaster. But Tom had been dead for 14 months, kicked by a horse, and gone before sunset, and Evelyn had spent every day since trying to fill a space she wasn't built for. "Tell me a story," Noah said quietly. She glanced at him. His face was flushed now, fever rising. She crossed the room and pressed her palm to his forehead, hot, too hot, and felt something crack inside her chest. "What kind of story?" "One with an adventure, and somebody who wins." Evelyn sat down beside him, pulling a blanket around her own shoulders. The cold was seeping through the floorboards, through the walls, through everything. "All right," she said. "Once there was a girl who lived on a farm at the edge of the world." She talked until her voice went hoarse, until Noah's eyes drifted shut and his breathing evened out into something almost like sleep. Then she sat in the near dark, watching the fire burn down, listening to the wind try to murder them. The knock came just after midnight. 3 solid thuds against the door, heavy and deliberate. Evelyn's heart stopped. Nobody traveled in a storm like this. Nobody could. The nearest neighbor was 8 miles south, and she hadn't seen another living soul since the snow started, which meant whoever was outside was either desperate or dangerous, and neither option ended well for a woman alone with a sick child. She stood slowly, every muscle tensed. The knife, Tom's hunting knife, hung on a nail beside the door. She lifted it down, felt its familiar weight. The knock came again. Harder. "Who's there?" Her voice cut through the wind's noise. Silence. Then, Someone who'll freeze if you don't open up. A man's voice. Deep, rough-edged. Not from around here. The accent carried something Eastern, maybe Kentucky or Tennessee. Storm's no reason to trust strangers, Evelyn called back. Storm's every reason. A pause. I've got a horse half dead in your yard. I can stable him and be gone by morning. Or I can die out here and you can live with it. Your choice. Evelyn's hand tightened on the knife handle. Every instinct Tom had taught her screamed danger. You didn't let unknown men into your home. You didn't take risks with predators. You didn't... Please. That single word, stripped of pride, made her hesitate. She crossed to the window and wiped frost from the glass. At first she saw nothing but white chaos. Then a shape moved, massive, dark, hunched against the wind. Behind it, another shape that could have been a horse or a demon or just her imagination playing tricks. If she turned him away, he'd die. That was certain. If she let him in, he might kill her. That was possible. Evelyn looked back at Noah, still sleeping, still burning with fever. The boy needed food, needed medicine, needed things she didn't have and couldn't get. If the stranger had supplies, if he had anything, it might be worth the risk. She unlocked the door. The wind hit like a fist, nearly tearing the door from her grip. Snow poured in, and with it came the man. He was huge. That was her first thought. Taller than Tom by half a foot, shoulders broad enough to block the doorway, hands the size of dinner plates. Ice clung to a dark beard, and his coat, heavy canvas, nearly frozen solid, made him look even larger. He stumbled inside and Evelyn slammed the door behind him, threw the bolt, and stepped back with the knife raised. "Don't move!" The man stopped. He didn't raise his hands or make excuses, just stood there, dripping meltwater onto her floor, breathing hard. "Your horse," Evelyn said. "Where?" "Tied to your porch rail. He won't last long out there." "That's not my problem." "No, it's mine." The man's eyes, pale gray like dirty ice, fixed on her. "But you let me in anyway. I can still put you back out." Something that might have been a smile crossed his face. "You could try." Evelyn's pulse hammered. This was a mistake. She knew it bone deep. But the alternative, sending him back into that storm, felt worse. "The shed," she said, 20 paces west of the house. You stable your horse, you come back inside, and you sleep by the door where I can see you. First wrong move, I'll gut you in your sleep." "Fair terms." He turned toward the door, and Evelyn caught a glimpse of something dark on his coat. Not ice. Blood. Frozen. Old, but unmistakable. "Wait." The man stopped. "You hurt?" "Not anymore." He went back out into the blizzard before she could ask what that meant. Evelyn stood frozen, knife still raised, heart still racing. Behind her, Noah stirred. "Who was that?" the boy whispered. "Nobody," Evelyn said. "Go back to sleep." But she didn't believe it, and neither did Noah. The man returned 10 minutes later, stamping snow from his boots, ice breaking off his coat and sheets. He'd left his hat and gloves in the shed, revealing dark hair shot through with gray, and a face that looked like it had been broken and rebuilt too many times. "Appreciate the shelter," he said. Evelyn gestured toward the far corner with the knife. "Sit. Don't talk to the boy. Don't touch anything." He nodded and lowered himself to the floor with his back against the wall, moving carefully, like someone used to being watched. When he settled, Evelyn saw the gun, a revolver holstered at his hip. "The gun stays where I can see it," she said. Without argument, he unbuckled the holster and set it on the floor between them. Silence settled over the cabin, broken only by the fire's crackle and the wind's endless assault. Evelyn sat across from the stranger, knife in her lap, trying not to think about how small the space suddenly felt. "You got a name?" the man asked eventually. "Mrs. Hart." "That mean there's a Mr. Hart?" "There was." The man nodded, like that told him everything he needed to know. "Name's Rowan Kane. Where are you headed, Mr. Kane?" "Away." "From what?" His eyes shifted to the fire. "Things that don't need following me here." It wasn't an answer, but Evelyn didn't push. She'd learned that people running from something rarely wanted to name it. Noah coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made Evelyn's chest tighten. Rowan's gaze flicked toward the boy, his expression unreadable. "How long's he been sick?" Rowan asked. 2 days. You got medicine? No. Food? Evelyn's silence was answer enough. Rowan stood slowly, and Evelyn's hand went to the knife, but he just moved to his saddlebag, still dripping by the door. He dug inside and pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle. Dried venison, he said, tossing it to her. And some hardtack. Not much, but it's something. Evelyn caught the bundle, stunned. Why? Because the kid's starving, and I'm not. He settled back against the wall, closing his eyes like the conversation was over. Evelyn unwrapped the bundle. The meat was tough, salted, well-preserved. Enough for 3 days, maybe 4 if she stretched it. She looked at Rowan, this massive, dangerous stranger who'd just handed over food in the middle of a blizzard, and felt the first crack in her certainty about him. Thank you, she said quietly. Rowan didn't open his eyes. Don't thank me yet. The storm raged on through the night. Evelyn dozed in fits, jerking awake every time Noah coughed, or the wind hit a new pitch of violence. Rowan didn't seem to sleep at all. He just sat motionless in the corner, a dark shape barely distinguishable from shadows. By morning, the blizzard had eased to a steady snowfall. Not gone, just catching its breath. Evelyn woke to the smell of coffee. She sat up fast, reaching for the knife, but Rowan was just crouched by the fireplace, pouring grounds into a battered pot. He'd added wood to the fire, and the cabin was warmer than it had been in days. Found your coffee tin, he said without turning around. Figured you wouldn't mind. I minded you going through my things. Then you should have woken up faster. Evelyn stood, joints aching from cold and bad sleep. Rowan poured coffee into 2 tin cups and held one out. She took it warily, half expecting poison, but the first sip tasted like salvation. Your boy's still fevered, Rowan said, but his breathing's better. Evelyn glanced at Noah. The kid was curled on his side, face less flushed than yesterday. She'd given him some of the venison before bed, and it had stayed down. The woodshed's nearly empty, Rowan continued, and your roof's got 3 spots where snow's coming through. You've also got a fence down on the south side and a door on the shed that won't close. I can fix that. I didn't ask for repairs. Didn't say you did. He drained his coffee. But I'm here, and I've got hands. Seems stupid to waste them. Evelyn studied him over the rim of her cup. In daylight, Rowan looked older than she'd first thought. Maybe 40, maybe more. His face carried scars. His knuckles were misshapen from old breaks, and his eyes had the flat, distant quality of someone who'd seen things worth forgetting. Why? She asked. Why what? Why help? You don't know us. You don't owe us. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then, maybe that's exactly why. He stood, pulled his coat back on, and headed for the door. Wait, Evelyn said. If you're going out, check the traps. East side of the property near the creek. Might be something in them. Rowan nodded and disappeared into the snow. For the next 3 days, a strange rhythm took hold. Rowan worked. Fixing, hauling, repairing things Evelyn hadn't even known were broken. He reset the traps and brought back 2 rabbits. He cleared snow from the roof and patched the leaks with tar he found in the shed. He barely spoke, never asked for anything, and slept each night by the door with his gun within reach. Noah recovered slowly, eating small meals and watching Rowan with open fascination. Why's he so big? The boy asked one afternoon. Some people just are, Evelyn said. Is he staying? No. But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. On the 4th morning, Evelyn woke to Rowan standing at the window, staring out at something she couldn't see. What is it? She asked. Riders, he said quietly. 3 of them, coming up from the south. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Who? Don't know, but they're not lost. She moved to the window. Through the snow, she could just make out dark shapes moving toward the cabin, deliberate, purposeful. You expecting company? Rowan asked. No. Then we've got a problem. The riders came closer, and Evelyn recognized the man in front, tall, thin, dressed in a dark coat that looked too fine for the wilderness. Victor Halden, land broker. She'd seen him once before, months ago, when he'd come sniffing around about water rights. Tom had sent him away, but Tom was gone. You know him? Rowan's voice was low, dangerous. His name's Halden. He wanted to buy our land. My husband refused. And now he's back. Evelyn's hands clenched. Tom said he was the kind of man who didn't take no for an answer. Rowan stepped back from the window. His hand moved to his gun. "Stay inside," he said. "Keep the boy quiet." "What are you going to do?" "Find out what they want." He walked out before she could stop him. Evelyn grabbed Noah and pulled him into the corner, away from the windows. Her heart hammered. Through the warped glass, she watched Rowan step off the porch and plant himself in the yard, arms crossed, a wall of muscle and bad intent. The riders stopped 10 feet away. Victor Halden smiled. "Well," Halden said, his voice carrying through the cold air. "I wasn't expecting to find you here, Kane." Evelyn's blood went cold. They knew each other. Rowan said nothing. Halden's smile widened. "Mrs. Hart inside?" "She's not interested in visitors." "That's unfortunate. I have business with her." "No, you don't." One of Halden's men, a thick-shouldered brute with a scarred face, shifted in his saddle. His hand moved toward his coat. Rowan's voice dropped to something flat and final. "Do it, and you'll die before you clear leather." The man froze. Halden laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Easy, gentlemen. We're all civilized here." His eyes fixed on Rowan. "I'm surprised to see you, Kane. Last I heard you were running from a noose in Montana." "Last you heard wrong." "Maybe." Halden's gaze shifted to the cabin. "Mrs. Hart owes a debt. Land taxes 3 years overdue. I've purchased that debt, which means I now hold claim to this property." Evelyn's world tilted. Taxes. Tom had handled all that. She'd never even seen the paperwork. "That's a lie," Rowan said. "It's documented fact." Halden pulled a folded paper from his coat. "All legal. All binding. Mrs. Hart can settle, or she can vacate." "She's not doing either." Halden's smile faded. "This doesn't concern you, Kane." "I'm making it concern me." The two men stared at each other, and the air between them felt like the moment before lightning strikes. Finally, Halden tucked the paper away. "I'll give Mrs. Hart 1 week to consider her options. After that, I'll return with the sheriff, and with more men." His eyes narrowed. "And Kane, if you're still here, I'll make sure that Montana noose finds its way to Colorado." He turned his horse and rode off, his men following. Rowan stood motionless until they disappeared into the trees. Then he walked back to the cabin, his face carved from stone. Evelyn met him at the door. "What did he mean?" she demanded. "Montana? A noose?" Rowan didn't answer. He moved past her, grabbed his saddlebag, and started packing. "You're leaving." "I should have left days ago." "Why? What did you do?" Rowan stopped, his back to her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, "I killed men who deserved it, and some who didn't." "That enough for you?" Evelyn's breath caught. Rowan turned to face her, and his eyes were empty. No regret, no shame, just cold statement of fact. "Halden worked for the same people I did. Mining interests, land grabs, clearing out homesteaders who wouldn't sell. I was good at it, too good. Then one day I got sent to a place like this, a family, a sick kid, a woman who'd done nothing wrong, and I couldn't do it anymore." He slung the bag over his shoulder. "So I walked away, and they've been hunting me ever since." "Then why come here?" "Because I didn't know it was here. Just saw a light in a storm and thought I'd found shelter." His jaw tightened. "I was wrong." He moved toward the door. "Wait. No." Rowan's voice was hard. "Halden's coming back, and when he does, he'll bring men who won't hesitate. If I'm here, he'll use me to justify whatever he does to you. You've got one chance to survive this, and it starts with me being gone." Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but the logic was brutal and clear. Rowan opened the door and froze. Outside, the snow had stopped, and in the distance, barely visible through the trees, smoke rose in a thin column. Rowan's expression went dark. "That's not a campfire." "What is it?" "Signal." He dropped his bag. "They're already moving." Before Evelyn could react, Rowan was out the door, running toward the smoke. She grabbed her coat and followed, Noah's voice calling after her. They reached the southern ridge in minutes. Below, Evelyn's stomach turned to ice. Her barn, the one Tom had built, the one that held their last horse and winter hay, was burning, and in front of it stood 3 men. Not Halden. Different men. Harder men. One of them looked up and saw Rowan. His face split into a grin. Well, hell, the man called. Look what the storm dragged in. Rowan's hand went to his gun, but he was too slow. The man fired. The shot echoed across the valley, and Rowan went down. Evelyn screamed and ran toward him, but strong hands grabbed her from behind. One of the men had circled around. She fought, kicking and clawing, but he was too strong. Let her go! Noah's voice shrill with terror. The boy had followed them. He stood at the ridge, small and shaking, staring at the nightmare unfolding below. The man holding Evelyn laughed. Looks like we got ourselves a bonus. Rowan struggled to his feet, blood streaming from his shoulder. His eyes found Evelyn's, and in them she saw something she hadn't seen before. Rage. Not the cold, empty violence she'd feared, something hotter, something protective. You made a mistake, Rowan said, his voice low and terrible. The man with the gun laughed. Yeah, what's that? You should have killed me first. Rowan moved, fast. Impossibly fast for a man his size, for a man bleeding. He closed the distance and drove his fist into the gunman's throat. The man went down choking. Rowan took his gun, spun, and fired twice, clean, precise shots that dropped the other two men before they could react. The man holding Evelyn released her and ran. Rowan let him go. He staggered, bleeding worse now, and fell to one knee. Evelyn ran to him, Noah right behind her. You're hurt. I'm fine. Rowan's voice was tight with pain. Get back to the cabin. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. What about you? I'll handle this. You can barely stand. Rowan grabbed her arm, his grip iron hard despite the blood loss. Halden knows I'm here now. He'll come fast and he'll come mean. You've got maybe a day, 2 if you're lucky. Take the boy and run. Where? Anywhere. Just go. And you? Something almost like a smile crossed his face. I'll buy you time. He pushed himself to his feet and stumbled toward the barn, still burning, still collapsing. Evelyn stood frozen, watching him disappear into smoke and flame. A man she barely knew, dying to save a woman he didn't owe. Noah tugged her hand. Miss Evelyn? What do we do? She looked down at the boy, at his frightened eyes, his too thin face, his absolute trust. Then she looked back at the burning barn and made her choice. We don't run, she said. She picked up one of the fallen men's rifles and checked the chamber. We fight. Noah stared at the rifle in Evelyn's hands like it was a snake. You don't know how to shoot that, he said. Your mother taught me. Evelyn checked the bolt action, her hand steadier than she felt. 3 summers ago, when the coyotes got bad. Did you ever hit anything? Once. What'd you hit? A fence post. Noah's face went pale, but he didn't argue. Smart kid. He understood that sometimes you had to pretend competence, even when you had none. Rowan emerged from the smoke, his shirt dark with blood, his face gray. He'd dragged 2 of the fallen men away from the flames and now stood swaying, one hand pressed to his shoulder. I told you to run, he said, and I told you no. Evelyn moved toward him, rifle still gripped tight. Sit down before you fall down. Don't have time to sit. Make time. For a moment, something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Then his knees buckled, and he went down hard, catching himself on one arm. Evelyn dropped beside him and pulled his hand away from the wound. The bullet had torn through the meat of his shoulder, missing bone, but taking a chunk of muscle with it. Blood pulsed steady, not spurting, which meant the artery was intact, but bad enough. I need cloth, she said to Noah. Clean as you can find. And water. The boy ran. Rowan's breathing came shallow. You should have gone. We've established I'm bad at following orders. She pressed her palm against the wound, applying pressure. He hissed through his teeth but didn't pull away. How many more are coming? Depends on how much Halden's paying. Guess. 10, maybe 15. Evelyn's stomach dropped. We can't fight that many. No, we can't. Rowan's eyes fixed on hers. Which is why you need to leave. Tonight. Take what you can carry and head for Denver. Don't stop. Don't look back. This is my home. Home's just wood and nails. You can build another one. Not without land. Not without money. Her voice came out harder than she intended. Halden takes this place, I've got nothing. Noah's got nothing. We'll end up in some city tenement working ourselves to death for pennies, and that's if we're lucky. Better than dead. Maybe. Maybe not. Noah returned with a torn bedsheet and a canteen. Evelyn folded the cloth into a pad and packed it against Rowan's shoulder, then wrapped the rest around his torso to hold it in place. The makeshift bandage soaked through almost immediately, but the bleeding slowed. Can you stand? She asked. Rowan pushed himself up, jaw clenched against the pain. Yeah. Can you shoot? Better than you can. That's not saying much. He almost smiled. They made it back to the cabin as the sun touched the western peaks. Inside, Evelyn bolted the door and checked the windows, all 4 of them, each one a potential entry point. The cabin had been built for shelter, not defense. Tom had never imagined needing to hold it against armed men. We need to board these up, Rowan said, reading her thoughts. With what? I don't have enough lumber. Furniture, shelves, anything flat. They worked quickly, prying boards from the table and bench, nailing them across the windows until only narrow gaps remained. It wouldn't stop bullets, but it would stop someone from climbing through. Noah helped where he could, holding nails and passing tools, his small face set with determination. When the last board went up, Evelyn stepped back and surveyed their work. The cabin looked like a coffin. How long can we hold? She asked. Rowan didn't answer right away. He was counting ammunition, his revolver, the rifle she'd taken, the shotgun Tom had kept above the door. Not enough. Not nearly enough. If they come at night, maybe till dawn, he said finally. If they're smart, they'll burn us out. And if they're not smart, then we might last till noon. Evelyn sat down on the floor, suddenly exhausted. Adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the reality of what they faced. 3 people, one of them a child, trapped in a wooden box against men who killed for money. I'm sorry, Rowan said quietly. She looked up. For what? For bringing this down on you. You didn't bring anything. Halden was coming either way. Maybe, but I made it worse. Evelyn shook her head. You gave us a chance. That's more than we had before. Some chance. It's what we've got. They ate cold venison in silence, rationing what little remained. Noah fell asleep curled in a blanket, his fever finally broken, his breathing deep and even. Evelyn watched him sleep and felt something fierce and protective rise in her chest. His mother was a good woman, she said. Worked herself half to death trying to give him a life. She deserved better than what she got. Most people do, Rowan said. You ever have kids? No. Ever want them? He was quiet for a long time. Once. Long time ago. What happened? Same thing that always happens. I ruined it. Evelyn studied his face in the firelight, the scars, the broken nose, the eyes that had seen too much. You seem pretty good at ruining things. It's a talent. Well, try not to ruin this. I'll do my best. Night settled over the cabin like a held breath. Evelyn took first watch, sitting by the door with the shotgun across her lap. Rowan slept sitting up, his back against the wall, his hand resting on his revolver. Every sound outside made her jump, wind in the trees, snow sliding off the roof, something that might have been an animal or might have been a man. Around midnight, Rowan's eyes opened. Hear something? Evelyn whispered. No, just checking you're still awake. I'm awake. Good. He shifted, wincing. Tell me about your husband. The question surprised her. Why? Because I need to know what kind of man builds a place like this and leaves a woman to defend it alone. Evelyn bristled. He didn't leave. He died. I know, but what kind of man was he before that? She wanted to snap at him, to tell him it was none of his business, but something in his tone stopped her. He wasn't judging, he was just asking. Tom was steady, she said finally. Not exciting, not romantic, but steady. He worked hard, didn't drink much, treated me fair. That was enough. You love him? I married him. That's not what I asked. Evelyn looked away. I cared for him, respected him. That counts for something. Yeah, it does. What about you? You ever love anyone? Rowan's expression closed off. Once. What happened? I told her what I was, what I'd done. She left. Smart woman. Yeah. They fell silent again. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the boarded windows. Evelyn, Rowan said. She turned. If things go bad tomorrow, if they get inside, you take Noah and you run. Don't wait. Don't look back. Just run. And you? I'll buy you time. By dying? If that's what it takes. Evelyn's throat tightened. You don't owe us that. Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway. She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Dawn came cold and gray, the sky the color of old steel. Evelyn woke from a thin sleep to find Rowan already up, moving through the cabin with careful precision despite his injury. He'd reloaded every weapon, checked every sight line, positioned ammunition within easy reach. You do this a lot? She asked. More than I'd like. Noah stirred and sat up, rubbing his eyes. Are they here yet? Not yet, Evelyn said, but soon. The boy nodded like he'd expected that answer. What do you need me to do? Stay low, stay quiet. If shooting starts, you get behind the woodpile and you don't move. Understand? Yes, ma'am. He was too calm, too accepting. It broke something in Evelyn's chest. They waited. Minutes crawled past like hours. The sun climbed higher, turning the snow blinding white. Evelyn's hands ached from gripping the shotgun. Her eyes burned from staring at nothing. Then Rowan stiffened. There, he said, pointing, movement in the trees. Shapes resolving into men on horseback. 8 of them, spread out in a loose line. Halden rode in the center, his dark coat standing out against the snow. They stopped 50 yards from the cabin. Mrs. Hart, Halden's voice carried clear and cold. I'm here to collect on your debt. You can settle or you can vacate. Those are your options. Evelyn moved to the gap in the boarded window. I don't owe you anything. The law says different. I've got the paperwork. You've got nothing. Then show me the paperwork. Halden pulled a document from his coat and held it up. Even from a distance, Evelyn could see it was official. Stamps, signatures, seals. 3 years back taxes, Halden called, plus interest, plus penalties, comes to $600. Pay up or get out. $600. It might as well have been $6,000. Evelyn didn't have $6. I need time, she said. You're out of time. Then you're out of luck because I'm not leaving. Halden's smile was thin and cold. I was hoping you'd say that, he gestured. 3 of his men dismounted and started walking toward the cabin. Rowan moved to the window opposite Evelyn, rifle raised. Let them get close, he said quietly. Wait for my shot. Evelyn's heart hammered. Her hands shook. The men kept coming, 30 yards, 20, 10. Rowan fired. The lead man dropped, clutching his leg. The other 2 scattered, diving for cover. Return fire erupted, bullets punching through the wooden walls, splintering boards. Evelyn ducked, pulling Noah down with her. The noise was deafening, crack after crack after crack. Rowan fired again, then rolled away from the window as a bullet tore through where his head had been. How many? Evelyn shouted over the gunfire. Still 8, 1 wounded. That's not enough. Then shoot somebody! Evelyn crawled to her window and peered through the gap. One of Halden's men was reloading behind a tree. She aimed, breathed out, and squeezed the trigger. The shotgun kicked hard, the blast louder than thunder. The tree exploded in splinters and the man behind it screamed. Did I hit him? Evelyn yelled. Hit the tree. Close enough! The gunfire slackened. Halden's men had taken cover, reassessing. Evelyn used the lull to reload, her hands clumsy with adrenaline. Mrs. Hart, Halden called. You're only making this harder on yourself. Go to hell, she shouted back. Already been. Didn't care for it. More shots. The cabin walls looked like they'd been attacked by giant woodpeckers. Holes everywhere, daylight streaming through in narrow beams. One bullet passed so close to Evelyn's head that she felt the air move. Rowan dropped another man, clean shot through the shoulder that sent him spinning. The rest pressed closer, emboldened by numbers. They're flanking, Rowan said. 2 going around back. Can you stop them? Not from here. He pushed himself up and moved toward the back wall, each step clearly painful. Evelyn wanted to tell him to rest, to let her handle it, but she'd already proven she couldn't hit a barn door from inside the barn. Glass shattered. One of Halden's men had thrown a rock through the last unboarded window. Before Evelyn could react, something else came through, a burning bottle, trailing flame. The whiskey inside ignited on impact, spreading fire across the floor. Noah! Evelyn grabbed the boy and pulled him away from the flames. Rowan was already stomping at the fire, trying to smother it with a blanket, but it spread fast, hungry, eager. Smoke filled the cabin. "We have to get out," Evelyn shouted. "That's what they want." "We'll burn if we stay." Rowan looked at the flames, then at the door, his face grim. "Then we go out fighting." He threw the bolt and kicked the door open. The man standing on the other side barely had time to register surprise before Rowan shot him in the chest. Two more appeared from the sides. Rowan dropped one with his revolver, grabbed the other by the throat, and slammed him into the ground so hard Evelyn heard bones break. Then more men rushed them. Too many, too fast. Rowan went down under their weight, fists and boots raining down. Evelyn raised the shotgun but couldn't get a clear shot. They were everywhere, grabbing her arms, wrestling the gun away. "Noah, run!" she screamed. The boy bolted, fast and small, slipping through the chaos like water. One of Halden's men lunged for him but missed. Noah disappeared into the trees. Hands grabbed Evelyn's hair, yanked her backward. She fought, kicking and clawing, but there were too many. Someone hit her across the face and the world went white with pain. When her vision cleared, she was on her knees in the snow, arms pinned behind her back. Rowan was on the ground 10 feet away, 3 men holding him down, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. Halden dismounted and walked toward them, his boots crunching in the snow. "Well," he said. "That was dramatic." Evelyn spat blood. "Go to hell! You keep saying that. I'm starting to think you don't like me." Halden crouched in front of her, his face level with hers. "Here's how this works. You sign over the deed to your land. You do it now, you do it clean, and I let you walk away. And if I don't?" Halden's smile was ice. "Then I shoot you, shoot Kane, and forge your signature anyway. Either way, I get the land. This way's just neater." "Why do you even want it? It's barely worth anything." "Oh, Mrs. Hart, you really have no idea, do you?" Halden stood and gestured toward the ridge. "You're sitting on one of the largest underground water sources in this part of Colorado. Denver's growing fast. They'll pay a fortune for water rights. Your husband knew that. That's why he refused to sell." Evelyn's mind reeled. Tom had never mentioned water, never mentioned value. He'd just said no to Halden and left it at that. "He was a smart man," Halden continued. "Too smart. He would have fought me in court, tied up the deed for years. So I had to wait for him to die." He paused. "Lucky for me, horses can be unpredictable." The words hit Evelyn like a physical blow. "You killed him," she whispered. "I didn't, but I paid someone who did." Halden pulled a pen and paper from his coat. "Now, are we doing this the easy way or the permanent way?" Rowan surged up, throwing off the men holding him with raw strength. He made it 2 steps before someone clubbed him across the back of the head. He dropped like a stone. "Rowan!" Evelyn screamed. Halden sighed. "The permanent way, then." He drew his pistol and aimed at Rowan's head. "Wait!" Evelyn's voice cracked. "Wait, I'll sign." Halden lowered the gun. Smart girl. He held out the paper and pen. Evelyn's hands shook as she took them. The document was simple. A deed transfer, already filled out, just needing her signature. She looked at Rowan, still unconscious on the ground. Looked at the burning cabin. Everything Tom had built going up in smoke. Looked at the trees where Noah had disappeared. The pen touched paper. A gunshot split the air. One of Halden's men dropped, a hole in his chest. Everyone froze. Another shot. Another man down. "What the—" Halden spun, searching for the shooter. A third shot took out the man holding Evelyn. His grip loosened, and she wrenched free, diving for cover. The shots were coming from the ridge, precise, methodical, fired by someone who knew what they were doing. Halden's men scattered, returning fire wildly. But they couldn't see the shooter, couldn't target what they couldn't find. Another shot, another man down. "Fall back," Halden shouted. "Get to the horses." They ran, dragging their wounded, leaving Rowan and Evelyn in the snow. Halden mounted his horse and looked back, his face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," he yelled. Then they were gone, swallowed by the trees. Evelyn crawled to Rowan and rolled him over. Blood matted his hair, but his chest rose and fell. Alive. Who's shooting? He mumbled, eyes unfocused. I don't know. A figure emerged from the ridge, tall, lean, carrying a rifle like it was part of his arm. As he got closer, Evelyn saw he was old, maybe 60, with white hair and a weathered face. He stopped 10 feet away, rifle lowered but not holstered. Name's Cooper, he said. Samuel Cooper. I'm your neighbor. Evelyn stared at him. I don't have neighbors. You do now. Cooper nodded toward the south. Got a place 8 miles that way. Saw the smoke yesterday. Figured I'd check it out. His eyes moved to Rowan. You gonna live? I think so. Good. Because we need to move. Halden will be back, and next time he'll bring more men than I've got bullets. Why are you helping us? Cooper's expression hardened. Because Halden tried the same thing on me 6 months back. I sent him packing, but I know his type. He doesn't quit, and I don't like bullies. He offered his hand. Can you walk? Evelyn took it and pulled herself up. Yes. Then let's get moving. We've got work to do. They hauled Rowan between them, his feet dragging in the snow. The cabin was fully engulfed now, flames reaching for the sky, everything inside turning to ash. Noah! Evelyn called. Noah! It's safe! The boy emerged from the trees, shaking but unhurt. He ran to Evelyn and grabbed her around the waist. I thought they got you, he said, voice muffled against her coat. Not yet. She stroked his hair. Not yet. Cooper led them to where he'd tied his horses, 3 of them, sturdy mountain breeds. They got Rowan across one saddle, Noah on another, and Evelyn rode behind Cooper. As they climbed away from the valley, Evelyn looked back one last time. The cabin was gone. The barn was gone. Everything Tom had built, everything she'd fought to keep, reduced to smoke and memory. But she was alive. Noah was alive. And Rowan was breathing. That had to count for something. Cooper's place was smaller than Evelyn's had been, but better fortified. Stone foundation, thick walls, narrow windows positioned for defense. He'd built it expecting trouble. They carried Rowan inside and laid him on a bed. Cooper's wife, a stern woman named Margaret, took over the doctoring without being asked. She cleaned the head wound, rebandaged the shoulder, and pronounced him lucky. Skull's too thick to crack proper, she said. He'll have a headache for a week, but he'll live. Evelyn sat at the table, exhausted beyond words. Noah had fallen asleep in a chair, his head on his arms. Cooper poured coffee and pushed a cup toward her. You married to Kane? He asked. No, he was just passing through. Passing through? In a blizzard? It's complicated, Cooper grunted. Halden called him by name. They've got history. They do. Bad history? The worst kind. Cooper nodded like that explained everything. Well, complicated or not, he fought for you. That counts. He's wanted. Halden said there's a bounty. There's a bounty on half the men west of the Mississippi. Doesn't make them all bad. Cooper sipped his coffee. What matters is what you do next. What can I do? I've got no home, no land, no money. You've got allies now, me and Margaret, and when Kane wakes up, you'll have him too. Until Halden comes back. Then we make sure Halden regrets it. Evelyn looked at the old man, this stranger who'd risked his life for people he didn't know. Why are you doing this? Cooper was quiet for a moment. Then, I had a daughter once. She married a homesteader, tried to make a life out here. Men like Halden came and took it from her, burned her house, killed her husband, left her with nothing. She died that winter, froze to death trying to walk to Denver. His voice never wavered, but his eyes were stone. I can't bring her back, he said, but I can make damn sure nobody else loses what she lost, not while I'm still breathing. Evelyn's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be ready. Cooper stood. Halden won't wait long, maybe a day, maybe 2. Then he'll come with everything he's got. We need to be ready when he does. How? First we figure out where he's weak, then we hit him there. He walked to a shelf and pulled down a rolled map, spreading it across the table. It showed the valley, the surrounding ridges, trails, and water sources marked in faded ink. Halden's got a camp 15 miles north, Cooper said, pointing. That's where he's staging. He'll have supplies there, men, weapons. He's also got a claim on the ridge above your old place. That's where the water source feeds through. So we destroy the camp? We could, but that just makes him angrier. Cooper's finger moved to a different spot on the map. Better option. We take his claim. Without it, he can't prove legal right to the water. And without the water, the whole deal falls apart. How do we take it? Same way he took yours. Force. Rowan's voice came from the bed, rough and thick. Won't work. They turned. He was awake, one hand pressed to his head, his face pale. Why not? Cooper asked. Because Halden's already got the paperwork filed. Even if you burn his claim, he's still got legal title. You'd need to prove fraud. Can we? Rowan sat up slowly, wincing. Maybe, if we can find who he bribed. He looked at Evelyn. Your husband. He ever deal with the county clerk? Sometimes, for permits and such. Then that's where we start. Clerk would have had to file the tax default. If Halden forged it, there'll be a record. Cooper frowned. That's a long shot. It's the only shot we've got. Margaret appeared with a bowl of stew and handed it to Rowan. Eat. You look half dead. He took it without argument and ate in silence. Evelyn watched him, this man who kept fighting for her despite every reason to walk away. Why are you still here? She asked quietly. Rowan looked up. Where else would I be? Gone. Running, like you've been doing for years. Maybe I'm tired of running. Or maybe you just can't help yourself. Something almost like a smile touched his face. That too. They spent the rest of the day planning. Cooper had connections, old army friends, fellow homesteaders, people who'd dealt with Halden and lost. He sent riders out with messages, calling in favors, building a network. By nightfall, 3 more men had arrived at the house. Veterans, all of them, hard-eyed and capable. They listened to the plan without comment, then agreed to help. Halden's made a lot of enemies, one of them said. About time somebody made him pay. They decided to move at dawn. Half the group would ride to the county seat to search records. The other half would fortify Cooper's place in case Halden came calling. It was a risk, splitting their forces, but they didn't have enough men to do both at once. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She sat by the window watching the snow fall, thinking about Tom and the life they'd built and lost. Rowan found her there around midnight. You should rest, he said. Can't. He sat down beside her, moving stiffly. His shoulder was bound tight, and the bruise on his head had turned spectacular shades of purple and black. You look terrible, Evelyn said. Feel worse. They sat in silence for a while. Then Evelyn said, Cooper told me about his daughter. Yeah. Does everyone out here have a tragedy? Pretty much. What's yours? Rowan's jaw tightened. I told you, I killed people. That's what you did, not who you are. He turned to look at her, his eyes unreadable. Maybe they're the same thing. I don't believe that. Why not? Because if they were, you wouldn't have come back for me when Halden's men attacked. You would have run. Rowan looked away. Maybe I should have. But you didn't. Evelyn reached out and touched his hand. Brief, tentative. That means something. He didn't pull away. What if I just make things worse? Then we'll deal with worse together. Rowan was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. I'm not a good man, Evelyn. I don't need good. I need alive. She squeezed his hand. And right now, you're the best chance I've got at staying that way. He met her eyes, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something other than emptiness there. Something almost like hope. All right, he said, then let's make sure you stay alive. Dawn came gray and cold. Cooper divided the group. He would ride with 2 men to the county seat, while Rowan, Margaret, and the remaining veterans stayed to defend the house. Noah would stay hidden in the root cellar, with instructions not to come out for anyone but Evelyn. Evelyn rode with Cooper's group, determined to see this through. If there was proof of Halden's fraud, she wanted to find it herself. The county seat was 20 miles south, a growing town called Blackstone that served as the region's administrative center. They arrived by mid-afternoon, snow-covered and exhausted. The clerk's office was a small building near the courthouse. Inside, a thin man with spectacles looked up from his desk. Help you? Cooper stepped forward. We're looking for tax records. Hart property, about 8 miles north of Ridgeline Valley. The clerk frowned. That's a sealed file. On whose order? Victor Halden's. He holds the claim now. We'd like to see the original filing. Can't do the court order? Cooper leaned on the desk. Son, we've ridden 20 miles in the snow. We're not leaving without those records. The clerk's hand moved toward a bell on his desk, probably to call for help. One of Cooper's men, a grizzled veteran named Dutch, pulled his coat back just enough to show the gun at his hip. Don't, Dutch said quietly. The clerk's hand froze. Just the records, Cooper said. Nobody needs to get hurt. The clerk swallowed hard, then nodded. He disappeared into a back room and returned minutes later with a dusty ledger. Evelyn opened it and flipped through pages until she found her name. The entry was dated 3 years back. A notice of tax default, signed by the county treasurer. But something was wrong. Tom paid those taxes, Evelyn said. I remember. He rode to Blackstone himself. You have proof? The clerk asked. He kept receipts. They were in the cabin. She trailed off. The cabin was ash now. Everything in it was gone. Cooper studied the entry. Who was the treasurer 3 years ago? The clerk checked another book. William Marsh, but he's dead now. Died last spring. Convenient, Dutch muttered. Evelyn's heart sank. No receipts, no treasurer, no way to prove fraud. Then she noticed something, a small notation in the margin of the ledger, written in different ink. A number followed by initials, CB-47. What's this? She asked, pointing. The clerk leaned in and squinted. That's a reference number. Means there's a corresponding file somewhere. Where? Probably in the archive, but that could take hours to search. Then we better get started, Cooper said. They spent the rest of the afternoon in a basement room filled with filing cabinets and dust. Evelyn's eyes burned from reading faded documents. Her back ached from bending over boxes. Just as the sun began to set, she found it. A thin folder marked CB-47. Inside was a receipt, Tom's receipt, stamped and signed by William Marsh, proving payment in full of all taxes owed on the Hart property. I've got it, Evelyn breathed. I've got proof. Cooper grabbed the folder and read it twice. Then he smiled, a hard, cold smile. Halden's done, he said. They left Blackstone at dusk, riding fast. If they could get this evidence to a judge, Halden's claim would be invalidated. Everything he'd done, the violence, the fraud, the murder, would unravel. They were 10 miles from Cooper's place when the ambush hit. Riders poured out of the trees on both sides, Halden's men, at least a dozen of them. Gunfire erupted, bullets whining past Evelyn's head. Go, Cooper shouted. Get to the house. They spurred their horses forward, riding hard through the snow. But Halden's men were fresh and fast. They closed the distance. Dutch turned in his saddle and fired, dropping one pursuer. But there were too many. A bullet caught his horse and the animal went down screaming. Dutch rolled clear but couldn't get up fast enough. Halden's men were on him. Keep going, he yelled. Don't stop. Evelyn wanted to turn back, wanted to help, but Cooper grabbed her reins and pulled her forward. He's buying us time, Cooper shouted. Don't waste it. They rode until their horses foamed, until Evelyn's lungs burned, until she could see Cooper's house in the distance. And then she saw the smoke. The house was burning. Cooper's horse stumbled, nearly throwing Evelyn forward. She grabbed the saddle horn and held on, her eyes locked on the flames consuming the house ahead. The smoke rose black and thick against the twilight sky, and somewhere in that inferno were Rowan, Margaret, and the men who'd stayed to defend. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Cooper was already spurring his horse faster, but the animal had nothing left to give. They'd ridden it half to death getting away from the ambush, and now it could barely manage a trot. Behind them, hoofbeats thundered closer. Halden's men were still coming. We can't stop, Cooper yelled over the wind. They're in there. And we'll be dead if we don't keep moving. But Evelyn wasn't listening. She yanked her reins free from Cooper's grip and turned her horse toward the burning house. The animal resisted, sensing danger, but she kicked hard and it lurched forward. The heat hit her 50 yards out, a wall of it, searing her face, stealing the air from her lungs. The house was fully engulfed now, flames pouring from every window, the roof starting to collapse. Nobody could be alive in there. Nobody. Then she saw movement near the barn. Figures stumbling through the smoke. 3 of them, supporting each other. Margaret's white hair caught the firelight. One of the veterans, his coat smoldering, and Rowan, barely on his feet, his face black with soot. "Rowan!" Evelyn screamed. He turned at the sound of her voice, his eyes finding hers across the chaos. For a moment, relief crossed his face. Then it shifted to horror as he saw what was coming behind her. Halden's riders burst from the tree line like demons, at least 8 of them, guns drawn. Rowan shoved Margaret toward the barn and raised his revolver, but his hands were shaking, his aim wild. He fired twice and missed both times. Cooper wheeled his horse around and shot back, buying seconds. One of Halden's men went down. The rest kept coming. Evelyn reached Rowan and nearly fell off her horse trying to dismount. "Can you ride?" "Not well." His voice was hoarse from smoke. "Where's Noah?" "Root cellar, I hope." She grabbed his arm. "We have to go." "Margaret can't." "I can ride fine," the older woman snapped, already pulling herself onto one of the horses that had been tied behind the barn. "Move!" The remaining veteran, a man named Pike, was unconscious, bleeding from a head wound. Rowan lifted him with strength that shouldn't have been possible given his injuries and threw him across a horse's back. Bullets kicked up snow around them. Cooper returned fire, his rifle cracking steady and controlled. "Go!" he shouted. "I'll cover!" They mounted, clumsy, desperate, and rode. Evelyn looked back once and saw Cooper still firing, still holding the line even as Halden's men surrounded him. "We have to help him!" she yelled. "He's giving us a chance!" Rowan's voice was raw. "Take it." They crashed into the woods, branches whipping at their faces. Behind them, the gunfire intensified, a furious volley that seemed to last forever, then stopped abruptly. Evelyn's stomach turned to ice. Cooper was dead or captured. Either way, he was gone. They rode for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, pushing the horses until they literally couldn't go any farther. When they finally stopped, Margaret slid from her saddle and collapsed in the snow, coughing violently. Rowan dismounted and checked Pike. The man's pulse was thready but present. The wound on his head was bad, deep, bleeding too much. "He needs a doctor," Rowan said. "Where are we supposed to find a doctor?" Evelyn's voice cracked. She was shaking, adrenaline finally giving way to exhaustion and terror. "We've got nothing. No shelter, no supplies, no—" "We've got each other." Margaret's voice cut through Evelyn's panic. "And we've got this." She pulled something from inside her coat. The folder. The evidence. Somehow, in the chaos, she'd grabbed it. "Cooper gave it to me before the attack started," Margaret said. "Told me to keep it safe no matter what." Her eyes were wet, but her voice stayed steady. "He knew they were coming, knew they'd burn us out. Did it anyway." Evelyn took the folder with trembling hands. Inside was the receipt. Tom's receipt, proof that Halden had forged the tax default. It was crumpled and smoke-stained now, but still legible. "This doesn't matter if we're dead," she said. "Then we stay alive long enough to make it matter." Rowan was binding Pike's head wound with torn strips of his own shirt. "How far to the next settlement?" Margaret thought for a moment. "Greystone. Maybe 15 miles east." "That's where Halden's been staging his men," Rowan said. "We go there. We walk right into him. So we go around. That adds another day, maybe 2. Pike won't last that long." They fell silent, the weight of impossible choices pressing down. Every option led to death or capture. Every path was blocked. Then Evelyn remembered. "The mine," she said. Rowan looked up. "What mine?" "Old silver mine, about 5 miles north. Tom showed it to me once. It's played out, abandoned. But the entrance is still there, and some of the tunnels go deep." "Deep enough to hide?" "Maybe. It's not much, but it's something." Rowan stood, wincing. His shoulder was bleeding again, fresh blood soaking through the bandage. "Then that's where we go." They moved slowly, cautiously, following game trails and avoiding open ground. Pike was tied to his horse to keep him from falling. Margaret rode in silence, her face carved from grief and determination. The mine entrance appeared just before full dark, a black mouth in the hillside, half collapsed, choked with dead brush. Rowan dismounted and cleared the entrance while Evelyn helped Margaret down. Inside, the tunnel stretched into darkness, the air cold and stale. Water dripped somewhere deep, echoing. It smelled like rot and old stone. "Not much of a castle," Margaret said. "It'll do." Rowan lit a match and found an old torch mounted on the wall. It caught reluctantly, throwing weak light across rough-hewn rock. They ventured deeper, leading until they found a wider chamber where the ceiling didn't threaten to cave in. Someone had worked here once. There were rusted tools scattered about, a broken cart, empty crates. Evelyn built a small fire using wood from the crates. It gave more smoke than heat, but it was better than freezing. They laid Pike near the flames and covered him with every blanket they had. "What happened at the house?" Evelyn asked. Margaret's jaw tightened. "They came just after you left. Too many to fight. We held them as long as we could, but they had torches and the walls." She trailed off. "Cooper told us to get out, said he'd buy time. I wanted to stay, but he—" Her voice broke. "He ordered me to go, so I went." "He saved us," Rowan said quietly. "He saved you," Margaret corrected. "I lost everything." She looked at Evelyn. "Did you at least get what you rode for?" Evelyn held up the folder. "We got it." "Then Cooper didn't die for nothing." The words hung in the cold air. Evelyn wanted to say something comforting, something that would ease the woman's pain, but there was nothing to say. Cooper was gone. His house was ashes. His sacrifice had bought them hours, maybe a day. It didn't feel like enough. They ate what little food they had, some jerky Margaret had stuffed in her pockets, half a loaf of bread that had survived the fire. It wasn't enough to satisfy hunger, just enough to remind them they were starving. Pike woke around midnight, delirious with pain and fever. He thrashed, calling out names, people long dead or far away. Rowan held him down while Margaret tried to get water into him. "He's not going to make it," Margaret said flatly. "He might. Don't lie to me, Kane. I've seen enough dying men to know." Rowan's expression went dark. "Then make him comfortable. That's all we can do." Pike died an hour before dawn, quietly, his breathing simply stopping between one moment and the next. Margaret closed his eyes and said something under her breath, a prayer maybe, or just goodbye. They buried him outside the mine in a shallow grave covered with rocks to keep animals out. It took an hour, working with their hands and a broken shovel Rowan found in the tunnel. By the time they finished, the sun was rising and they were all exhausted. "That's 3, Margaret said, staring at the grave. 3 good men dead because of Halden." 4, Evelyn corrected. "Tom was first. Then we owe 4 bodies." Margaret's eyes were cold. "And I mean to collect." They returned to the mine as the temperature dropped. Snow was coming again. Evelyn could smell it in the air, could see it in the heavy clouds rolling in from the west. "We can't stay here long," Rowan said. "No food, no heat. Another storm hits, we freeze." "So what do we do?" Evelyn asked. "We go on the offensive." "Against Halden? Are you insane? He's got 24 men, maybe more." "Which is why we don't fight him straight up." Rowan crouched by the fire and started drawing in the dirt. "Halden's got 3 advantages: men, money, and the law. We can't match him on the first 2, but the third, the law, that's his weakness." "How?" "Because everything he's done depends on people believing his claim is legitimate. The forged taxes, the filed paperwork, the legal authority to act. Take that away, and he's just a thug with a gun." Margaret leaned forward. "The receipt proves fraud, but who's going to believe us over him?" "Nobody. Not without leverage." Rowan looked at Evelyn. "Where's the nearest federal marshal?" "Blackstone. But Halden probably owns him." "Maybe. But marshals answer to territorial authority, not local money. We get this evidence to the territorial office in Denver, they'll have to investigate." "Denver's 2 days' ride," Margaret said. "Minimum. We don't have horses that can make it. Then we steal horses." "From who?" "From Halden." Evelyn stared at him. "You want to raid his camp?" "I want to hit him where it hurts, steal his horses, burn his supplies, make him pay for every inch of ground he's taken." Rowan's eyes glinted in the firelight. "And while he's chasing us, one of us gets to Denver with the evidence." "That's suicide. It's survival. If we sit here and wait, we die. If we run, he hunts us down and we die. This way we at least take something from him first." Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I'm in." "You don't have to—" "I'm in," she repeated, voice hard. "Cooper would want blood, so do I." Evelyn looked between them. These two people who'd lost everything, who had every reason to run and no reason to fight. And she thought about Noah, still hiding in Cooper's root cellar if he was lucky, captured or dead if he wasn't. "All right," she said. "What's the plan?" They spent the rest of the day preparing. Rowan had scouted Halden's camp weeks ago, back when he'd first been running from the bounty hunters. He drew a rough map in the dirt: supply tents, horse corral, guard positions. "He's got maybe 20 men there now," Rowan said. "Maybe more if he pulled everyone back after the attack. They'll be celebrating, drinking, not expecting trouble." "When do we hit them?" Margaret asked. "Tonight, before they have time to reorganize." "And Noah?" Evelyn's voice was quiet. Rowan met her eyes. "If he's alive, he's either still hiding or Halden's got him. Either way, we find out tonight." They left the mine at dusk, moving on foot through the trees. The horses were too tired to ride, and stealth mattered more than speed now. Rowan led, picking paths that avoided open ground. Margaret followed, moving with surprising quiet for a woman her age. Evelyn brought up the rear, carrying Tom's rifle, and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. The camp appeared through the trees just after full dark, a cluster of tents and wagons arranged in a rough circle, with a large fire in the center. Men moved between the tents, maybe a dozen of them visible. The horse corral was on the eastern edge, holding at least 20 animals. Rowan stopped and studied the layout. "Guards?" "Two on the corral," Margaret whispered. "One by the supply tent. Maybe more we can't see. We take out the guards first. Quiet. Then we fire the supply tent and stampede the horses in the confusion." "And if we get caught?" "We don't." They split up. Rowan circled toward the corral from the north. Margaret moved toward the supply tent. Evelyn stayed in position, rifle aimed at the camp, ready to provide cover if things went bad. Minutes crawled past. The cold seeped through Evelyn's coat, numbing her fingers. She watched Rowan's shadow move between the trees, impossibly silent for a man his size. He reached the first guard, a young man leaning against a post, half asleep. Rowan moved behind him, and there was a brief struggle, barely visible in the darkness. The guard went limp, one down. The second guard was more alert, pacing the corral's perimeter. Rowan waited until the man's back was turned, then rushed him. This time there was noise, a grunt, a scuffle. The guard started to shout, but Rowan's hand clamped over his mouth. They went down together, wrestling in the snow. Evelyn's finger tightened on the trigger, ready to shoot if Rowan lost. But he didn't. The guard stopped moving. Rowan stood, breathing hard, and waved Margaret forward. She appeared from the shadows, carrying something. A bottle with a rag stuffed in the neck. She lit it with a match and hurled it at the supply tent. The explosion was smaller than Evelyn expected, but the fire caught fast. Flames raced up the canvas, turning night into day. Men poured from the tents, shouting, scrambling for buckets. Rowan was already at the corral, cutting the ropes. The horses bolted, spooked by the fire, thundering through the camp and scattering everything in their path. Chaos erupted. Men dove for cover. Someone started shooting blindly into the darkness. Rowan grabbed 3 horses that had stayed near the corral and led them toward the trees. "Go!" he shouted to Margaret, but Margaret wasn't moving. She stood at the edge of the firelight, staring at something inside the camp. Evelyn's heart stopped. In the center of the chaos, tied to a post near the main tent, was Noah. The boy was alive, gagged and bound, his eyes wide with terror. "No," Evelyn breathed. She started to stand, to run toward him, but Rowan grabbed her arm. "Don't! It's a trap! He's right there! And surrounded by armed men. You go in there, you die!" "I don't care!" She wrenched free and ran. Bullets whined past her head. Someone shouted. Evelyn didn't slow down. She hit the camp at a full sprint, rifle forgotten, thinking only of the boy. She was 10 feet from Noah when someone tackled her from the side. They went down hard, rolling in the snow. Strong hands pinned her arms. A knee drove into her back. "Got her!" a voice yelled. Evelyn struggled, but it was useless. The man holding her was twice her size. More men appeared, grabbing her, hauling her upright. She fought anyway, kicking and screaming until someone hit her across the face and the world went white. When her vision cleared, she was on her knees in the snow, hands bound behind her back. Noah was 5 feet away, crying behind his gag, and standing in front of her, smiling, was Victor Halden. "Mrs. Hart," he said pleasantly, "was how good of you to join us." Evelyn spat blood at his feet. Go to hell. In time. Halden crouched down, his face level with hers. You've been quite the annoyance, burning my men, stealing my horses, making me look foolish. Appreciate it. You murdered my husband. I had him killed. There's a difference. Halden's smile widened. And now I'm going to return the favor. He stood and gestured to one of his men. Bring Cain. 2 men dragged Rowan into the firelight. His hands were bound and he was bleeding from a fresh cut above his eye, but he was alive. They threw him down next to Evelyn. There we go, Halden said. One big happy family. Margaret was dragged in next, struggling and cursing. They forced her to her knees beside Rowan. Halden walked a slow circle around them, hands clasped behind his back. You 3 have cost me time, money, and men. I could just shoot you and be done with it, but that feels inadequate. He stopped in front of Noah. The boy flinched. So here's what's going to happen, Halden continued. You're going to watch me kill the boy. Then I'm going to kill the old woman. Then Cain. And you, Mrs. Hart, get to live just long enough to sign over your land. After that, he shrugged. Accidents happen. Evelyn's heart hammered. Don't touch him, please. He's just a child. So was the daughter of the man who owned this camp before I took it. Halden drew his pistol. Funny how things come around. He aimed at Noah's head. Wait, Evelyn screamed. I'll sign. I'll sign right now. Just don't. A gunshot cracked across the camp. Halden stumbled, his gun falling from his hand. He looked down at the red stain spreading across his chest, his expression almost confused. Then he collapsed. More gunshots erupted from the darkness. Precise, controlled fire that dropped 3 of Halden's men before they could react. The rest scattered, diving for cover, returning fire blindly. Evelyn looked toward the source of the shots and saw figures moving through the trees. 5 of them, maybe 6, advancing with military precision. One stepped into the firelight, rifle raised. It was Cooper. He was battered, bloodied, barely standing, but alive. Told you I'd buy time, he said to Margaret. Didn't say how much. Behind him came more men, homesteaders, veterans, people Evelyn had never seen before. They'd come armed and angry, and they moved through Halden's camp like a storm. The remaining men dropped their weapons and ran. Within minutes, the camp was theirs. Cooper crossed to Margaret and cut her bonds. She threw her arms around him, shaking. You stubborn old fool, she whispered. I thought you were dead. Takes more than Halden's thugs to kill me. He turned to Rowan. You too, Cain. Nice trick with the horses. Rowan was staring at Halden's body, his expression unreadable. He dead? One of Cooper's men checked. Not yet, but close. Good. Rowan stood and walked to where Halden lay gasping in the snow. He crouched down, his face inches from the dying man's. You asked what it takes to kill me. Want to know the answer? Halden's lips moved, but no sound came out. More than you've got, Rowan said. He stood and walked away. Evelyn went to Noah and pulled off his gag, then cut his bonds. The boy collapsed into her arms, sobbing. It's okay, she whispered, stroking his hair. It's over. It's over. But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. Halden died before sunrise. They left his body in the snow and burned his camp to the ground, taking only the horses and whatever supplies were worth salvaging. Cooper's reinforcements had come from all over, men who'd lost land to Halden, who'd lost family, who'd been waiting for someone to make a stand. Word spreads fast out here, Cooper explained. I got to a few friends before Halden's men caught up. They spread the word. By the time I escaped, there were a dozen men ready to fight. You escaped? Evelyn asked. With some help. Cooper gestured to a tall man with a badge pinned to his coat. This is Marshal Garrett, federal man out of Denver. The marshal nodded to Evelyn. Mrs. Hart, I've been investigating Halden for 6 months. Land fraud, murder, extortion. But I could never get witnesses to testify. Everyone was too scared. When Mr. Cooper brought me evidence of forged tax documents, he held up the folder, now in his possession. Well, that changed things. So it's over? Evelyn's voice was small. Really over? Halden's organization is finished, Garrett said. But there will be legal proceedings. I'll need statements from all of you, and your land claim will have to be refiled properly. How long will that take? Months, maybe longer. The territorial court moves slow. Evelyn's heart sank. Months of waiting, of uncertainty, of living in limbo while lawyers argued. But then Rowan spoke up. She can stay at my place while that gets sorted out. Everyone turned to look at him. Your place? Evelyn said. Had a cabin, about 20 miles west. Been empty for a while, but it's still standing. He met her eyes. It's not much, but it's something. I thought you were running. I was, but I'm tired of it. His jaw set. Figure it's time to stop. Marshall Garrett studied Rowan with a lawman's eyes. You're Rowan Kane. Yeah. There's paper on you, Montana warrant, wanted for murder. I know. You want to tell me about it? Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then, I killed 3 men working for a mining company. They were clearing homesteaders off land the company wanted. I was part of the crew doing it. One day, they ordered me to burn a family out. Husband, wife, 2 kids. I refused. They tried to do it anyway. He paused. I stopped them, permanently. Witnesses? The family, if they're still alive. Garrett pulled a notebook from his coat and wrote something down. I'll look into it. If what you're saying checks out, and given your help here, he glanced at the smoking remains of Halden's camp. I might be able to make that warrant go away. And if it doesn't check out, then I arrest you, and you stand trial. Garrett's expression was neutral, but I'm inclined to believe you. Halden's ledgers mention a Kane who went rogue. Says you cost him a fortune in lost deals. Good, Rowan said. They rode out before the sun was fully up, leaving Halden's body for the carry-on birds. Evelyn rode with Noah in front of her, the boy finally asleep after 2 days of terror. Margaret rode beside Cooper, their horses close enough that their knees almost touched. Rowan rode alone, as always, but this time, Evelyn noticed, he stayed close to the group instead of ranging ahead. They reached Rowan's cabin by late afternoon. It was small, weathered, tucked into a valley that protected it from the worst winds. Not much to look at, but after everything, it looked like salvation. Inside, dust covered everything. The furniture was rough-hewn and practical. A single room, a fireplace, a loft overhead for sleeping. It's perfect, Evelyn said. Rowan looked at her like she'd lost her mind. It's a shack. It's shelter. It's safety. She set Noah down on the bed and covered him with a blanket. It's enough. Margaret and Cooper stayed long enough to help them settle in, then rode for their own place, or what was left of it. Before they left, Margaret pulled Evelyn aside. Kane's a good man, she said quietly. Doesn't think so. But he is. I know. Do you? Margaret's eyes searched hers. Because he's going to need someone who sees that, who reminds him when he forgets. Why are you telling me this? Because I see how he looks at you, and how you look at him. Margaret squeezed her hand. Don't waste it. After they left, Evelyn stood in the doorway and watched the sun set. Rowan was chopping wood, moving slowly because of his injuries, but refusing to stop. You should rest, she called. Need the wood. We have enough for tonight, not enough for tomorrow. Stubborn man. Evelyn walked over and took the axe from his hands. Then I'll do it. You sit. For once, he didn't argue. He lowered himself onto a stump and watched her work, his expression unreadable. You really staying? She asked after a while. Told you I was. Why? Because I'm tired of running, tired of being alone. He paused. And because you need someone who won't quit on you. Evelyn stopped mid-swing. I've never had that. You do now. She met his eyes across the woodpile and saw something there that made her chest tighten. Not emptiness this time, but something raw and honest and terrifying. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. Do what? Trust someone. Depend on someone. She set down the axe. Everyone I've ever relied on has left. My parents died. Tom died. She swallowed hard. I'm not good at letting people in. Rowan stood and crossed to her. He was close enough now that she could see the scars on his knuckles, the lines around his eyes, the fresh bruises from the fight. I'm not asking you to trust me, he said. I'm asking you to let me stay. Let me help. Let me prove I'm not leaving. His voice dropped. And maybe, eventually, you'll trust me. Or maybe you won't. Either way, I'm here. Evelyn looked up at him, this dangerous, broken man who'd fought for her when he had no reason to, who'd stayed when he should have run. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Stay. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or hope, or something she couldn't name. He reached up slowly and touched her face, his hand rough and gentle at once. Thank you, he said. Then he kissed her. It was brief, tentative, nothing like the passionate embraces in stories. Just a soft press of lips, lasting maybe 2 seconds before he pulled back. Sorry, he said. I shouldn't have. Evelyn grabbed his coat and pulled him back, kissing him harder this time. He froze for half a second, then wrapped his arms around her and held on like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Evelyn rested her forehead against his chest. Don't apologize, she said. All right. And don't leave. I won't. Promise? His arms tightened around her. I promise. They stood there as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, two broken people holding each other in the gathering dark, finally finding something worth holding on to. Inside the cabin, Noah slept through the night without waking once. Evelyn checked on him 3 times, unable to shake the fear that he'd disappear if she looked away too long. Each time the boy was there, breathing steady, his small face finally peaceful. Rowan sat at the table cleaning his revolver, the pieces laid out in careful order. His hands moved with practiced efficiency despite the bandages, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought couldn't. You ever sleep? Evelyn asked, settling into the chair across from him. Not much. Nightmares? Memories. Same thing. He fitted the cylinder back into place and spun it, checking the action. You should rest. Tomorrow's going to be long. So will the day after that, and the one after that. Evelyn watched him work. How long before Marshal Garrett comes back? Week, maybe 2. Depends on how fast he can dig up those witnesses from Montana. And if he can't find them? Rowan's hands stilled. Then I run again, or stand trial. Haven't decided which. You could just disappear, right now, before he comes back. I could. He met her eyes. Is that what you want? Evelyn's throat tightened. No. Then I stay. He said it like it was simple, like staying wasn't a death sentence if things went wrong, like trusting the law after years of running from it wasn't the most terrifying thing a man could do. Why? She asked. Why now? After all this time, why stop running? Rowan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze dropping to the gun in his hands. Because I'm tired of living like I'm already dead. Because every place I've been for the past 5 years has felt like borrowed time. He looked up. And because for the first time since I can remember, I've got something worth staying for. The weight of those words settled between them. Evelyn wanted to say something back, something that matched the rawness of his honesty, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she reached across the table and took his hand. He held on tight, like a drowning man grabbing a rope. They sat that way until the fire burned down to embers, neither one speaking, both afraid that if they let go, the moment would shatter and they'd be alone again. Morning came cold and bright. Evelyn woke to the smell of coffee and found Rowan already outside, splitting more wood. His shoulder had to be killing him, but his face showed nothing. Noah appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Is he always like that? Like what? Working. Even when he's hurt. Evelyn smiled despite herself. I think so. He's weird. Yeah, he is. They ate a sparse breakfast, the last of the supplies from Halden's camp, stretched thin. Evelyn did the math in her head and didn't like the answer. They had maybe 3 days of food left. After that, they'd be hunting or starving. Rowan came in as she was washing the tin plates. I'm riding to Cooper's place, see if they need help rebuilding. You're in no shape to rebuild anything. I can swing a hammer. With one working arm? He gave her a look that said he'd swing it anyway, injuries or not. Stubborn didn't begin to cover it. Fine, Evelyn said. But I'm coming with you. Someone should stay with Noah. Noah can come too. He's safer with us than alone. Rowan didn't argue. Maybe he was learning. They reached Cooper's property by mid-morning and found a scene of controlled chaos. The house was a blackened skeleton, still smoking in places, but Cooper and Margaret were already at work, sorting through the wreckage, salvaging what could be saved. Margaret looked up as they approached, her face streaked with soot. "Didn't expect to see you this soon. Thought you might need help," Rowan said. "We need a miracle, but help's a start." They worked through the day, hauling debris, sorting nails from ash, pulling intact boards from the ruins. It was brutal work, made worse by the cold and the constant reminder of what had been lost. Noah helped where he could, carrying small pieces, fetching water. He worked alongside Cooper without complaint, and Evelyn saw the old man's expression soften every time he looked at the boy. "He's got sand, that one," Cooper said to Evelyn during a break. "Takes after his mother. You knew her?" "Met her once. Tough woman. Took no guff from anyone." He paused. She'd be proud of how he handled himself through all this. Evelyn's chest tightened. He shouldn't have had to handle any of it. No child should, but they do anyway. Cooper's gaze drifted to the ruins of his home. "World's not fair. Never has been. Best we can do is teach them to survive it." By late afternoon, they'd cleared enough space to start planning the rebuild. Cooper sketched rough plans in the dirt, smaller than before, more defensible, built with stone where they could manage it. "Going to take months," he said. "Maybe longer, but we'll get it done." Margaret brought out a pot of stew she'd been cooking over an open fire. It was thin, mostly broth and wild onions, but it was hot, and it was something. As they ate, a rider appeared on the eastern ridge. Everyone tensed, hands moving toward weapons, until they recognized the horse. Marshal Garrett. He rode into camp looking tired and road-worn, his coat covered in trail dust. He dismounted and accepted a bowl of stew without ceremony. "Found your witnesses," he said to Rowan between bites. The camp went silent. Rowan set down his bowl. "And?" "Family named Hutchinson, homesteaders outside of Billings. They confirmed your story. Said you saved their lives, killed the men who were going to burn them out." Garrett pulled a folded paper from his coat. "Montana Territorial Prosecutor reviewed the case. Given the circumstances, they're dropping the charges." Evelyn's breath caught. "He's free?" "Free and clear." Garrett handed the paper to Rowan. "Officially pardoned. You can stop looking over your shoulder." Rowan stared at the document like it might vanish if he blinked. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded it, reading the words that ended 5 years of running. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "They've been hunting me for half a decade. Why stop now?" "Because the men you killed worked for a company that got shut down for corruption last year. Half the territorial government was taking bribes from them. Once that came out, anyone who'd stood against them became less of a criminal and more of a—" Garrett searched for the word. "Inconvenience to clean up. The prosecutor saw a chance to close an old case and look good doing it. So it's politics." "Everything's politics," Garrett finished his stew and stood. "But the result's the same. You're a free man, Kane." Rowan looked at Evelyn, his expression caught somewhere between disbelief and something that might have been hope. "Free," he repeated, like he was testing how the word felt. Garrett stayed the night and left at dawn, carrying statements from everyone about Halden's operation. He promised to expedite Evelyn's land claim, though he warned it would still take time. "Wheels of justice turn slow," he said, "but they do turn." After he left, the camp settled into a new rhythm. They worked on Cooper's house during the day, returned to Rowan's cabin at night. It was hard labor, made harder by dwindling supplies and the weather turning meaner. 2 weeks in, the food ran out completely. Rowan took his rifle and disappeared into the mountains before dawn. He returned after dark with a deer, not a big one, but enough to keep them fed for a while. "Where'd you learn to hunt like that?" Noah asked, watching Rowan butcher the animal with quick, efficient cuts. "My father. Before he died." "How'd he die?" "Mining accident, cave-in." Rowan didn't look up from his work. "I was 12. What'd you do after?" "Survived, same as everyone." Noah was quiet for a moment, then, "My ma said surviving's not the same as living." Rowan's hands paused. He looked at the boy, really looked at him, and something shifted in his expression. "Your ma was smart." "She was." Noah's voice got small. "I miss her." "I know. Do you miss your pa?" "Every day." The boy nodded like that made sense. Then he went back to watching Rowan work, and they didn't talk about it again. Winter deepened. Snow fell in waves, burying the valley under white that seemed to have no end. They burned through wood faster than they could cut it. Evelyn's hands split and bled from the cold, and no amount of salve seemed to help. Slowly, impossibly, Cooper's house began to take shape. Walls rose. A roof went on. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't finished, but it was shelter. On the day they got the chimney working, Margaret made a stew with the last of the deer meat and some potatoes she'd been hoarding. They ate together in the new house, sitting on the floor because there wasn't furniture yet, and it felt like a small victory against everything that had tried to break them. "To surviving," Cooper said, raising his cup. "To living," Margaret corrected. They drank to that. That night, walking back to Rowan's cabin through knee-deep snow, Evelyn slipped on ice and nearly fell. Rowan caught her, his arm around her waist, holding her steady. She looked up at him, at the way moonlight caught the frost in his beard, at the scars that mapped his face like a history written in violence. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For staying. For not running when you had the chance." His arm tightened around her. "Told you I wouldn't." "I know, but I still can't quite believe it." "Believe it." He leaned down and kissed her forehead, gentle despite the roughness of everything else about him. "I'm not going anywhere." They made it back to the cabin and found Noah already asleep by the fire, wrapped in every blanket they owned. Evelyn added wood to the flames and settled beside Rowan on the floor, her head on his shoulder. "What happens when the land claim goes through?" he asked quietly. "I don't know. Rebuild, I guess. Try to make something out of what's left." "You could sell, take the money and go somewhere easier." "I could." She laced her fingers through his. "But I won't." "Why not?" "Because Tom's buried there. Because it's the only thing I have left of the life I built." She paused. "And because I'm tired of running too." Rowan's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "Then we rebuild together." "You sure? That's a lot of work for land that isn't yours." "Could be." Evelyn pulled back to look at him. "Could be what?" "Mine. If you wanted." His jaw tightened. "I'm not good with words. Never have been. But what I'm trying to say is, if you'll have me, if you think you could stand having me around permanent-like, I'd like to help you build something that lasts." Her heart hammered. "Rowan Kane, are you asking to marry me?" "Not yet. Don't have a ring. Don't have anything worth offering." He met her eyes. "But I'm saying I want to. When things settle. When you're ready. If you're ready." Evelyn stared at him, this man who'd killed and bled and fought his way through hell, now offering her something as simple and terrifying as a future. "Ask me again when spring comes," she said softly. "And you'll say yes?" "I don't know yet," she smiled. "But I'm thinking about it." He pulled her close, and they sat that way until the fire burned low, both of them imagining what spring might bring. The weeks bled into months. Winter held on with vicious determination, dumping snow until the valley disappeared under drifts taller than a man. They survived on game and whatever supplies Cooper could spare, rationing everything, making each meal stretch further than seemed possible. Noah grew thinner despite their efforts. So did Evelyn. Rowan seemed immune to starvation, his frame staying solid through sheer stubborn refusal to break. In late February, disaster struck. Evelyn woke in the night to Noah coughing, deep, wet sounds that rattled in his chest. She pressed her hand to his forehead and felt heat radiating through his skin. "Rowan," she said, her voice tight with fear. "He's burning up." Rowan was on his feet instantly, lighting a lamp. In the flickering light, Noah's face was flushed, his breathing labored. "Same as before?" Rowan asked. "Worse." They spent the night trying everything, cold compresses, forcing water into him, keeping him wrapped against chills. Nothing worked. By dawn, the fever was higher, and Noah was delirious, calling for his mother. "We need medicine," Evelyn said, her voice cracking. "Real medicine, not just herbs and hope. Closest doctor's in Blackstone. That's 20 miles in this snow." "I know." Rowan was already pulling on his coat. "I'll make it." "You can't. Not alone. Not in this weather." "Then I'll die trying, but I'm not losing that boy." Evelyn grabbed his arm. "Wait. I'll go with you." "Someone needs to stay with Noah. Margaret's got her own house to worry about, and Cooper's too old for this." Rowan's expression was iron. I go alone. You stay here. Keep him alive until I get back." Before she could argue further, he was gone, disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness. Evelyn returned to Noah's side and held his hand, whispering stories she half remembered from her own childhood, anything to keep him tethered to consciousness. The hours crawled. Noah's fever spiked and broke and spiked again. Evelyn dozed in fits, jerking awake every time his breathing changed. Outside, the wind howled like something alive and hungry. Rowan rode through hell. The snow was chest deep on his horse in places, forcing him to dismount and lead the animal through drifts. The cold bit through every layer he wore, numbing his hands, his face, his feet. He made it 5 miles before the horse gave out. The animal went down hard, legs buckling, too exhausted to continue. Rowan pulled the saddle off and turned the horse loose, knowing it would probably die, but giving it a chance anyway. Then he started walking, 10 miles to Blackstone, on foot, through a blizzard. He lasted another 3 miles before his legs gave out. Rowan collapsed in the snow, his body finally hitting limits he'd pushed past for too long. The cold seeped in, turning his limbs to lead. His vision blurred. This was how it ended, he thought distantly. Not in a gunfight or a hanging, just frozen in the snow, trying to save a kid who wasn't even his. His eyes drifted closed. Then he heard hoofbeats. A rider appeared through the white. No, 2 riders. They dismounted and hauled Rowan to his feet. "Kane?" It was Cooper's voice. "What in hell are you doing out here?" "Noah," Rowan managed through numb lips. "Fever. Need doctor. You're half dead yourself." "Don't care. Get me to Blackstone." Cooper and the other man, one of the veterans who'd helped fight Halden, got Rowan onto a horse and tied him to the saddle to keep him from falling. Then they rode. They reached Blackstone by early afternoon. The doctor, an elderly man named Fisher, listened to Cooper's explanation and immediately began packing supplies. "Pneumonia, most like," Fisher said. "In a child that young, that weak, it's bad. I'll do what I can." They rode back through the storm, Rowan barely conscious, clinging to the saddle through instinct more than strength. They reached the cabin after dark. Inside, Evelyn looked up from Noah's bedside, her face gaunt with exhaustion and fear. "He's still breathing. Barely." Fisher went to work immediately, examining the boy, administering medicines Evelyn couldn't name. He worked through the night while everyone else waited, helpless. By dawn, the fever broke. Noah's breathing eased, color returned to his face. He opened his eyes and looked at Evelyn. "You stayed," he whispered. "Of course I stayed." She smoothed his hair back. "I'm not going anywhere." The boy's gaze drifted to Rowan, slumped in a chair by the fire, half frozen and exhausted. "He went for help." "He did. Why?" Evelyn looked at Rowan. This man who'd nearly died in a blizzard for a child who wasn't his blood, who had no claim on his protection. "Because he loves you," she said quietly. "Same as I do." Noah's eyes drifted closed again, but this time he was smiling. Fisher stayed 3 days, making sure Noah was truly on the mend before he'd leave. He left medications and instructions, refused payment, and rode back to Blackstone with Cooper. Rowan recovered slower than Noah did. The cold had damaged something in him, frostbite on his hands and feet, something wrong with his lungs that made him cough when he breathed deep. "You're an idiot," Evelyn told him one night as she wrapped his hands in clean bandages. "Yeah. You could have died." "Yeah. And you did it anyway." "Yeah." He looked at her. "You mad about it?" She wanted to be, wanted to yell at him for being reckless, for risking his life, for scaring her half to death. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him. "Don't do it again," she whispered against his lips. "Can't promise that." "Try anyway." "All right." Spring came slowly, reluctantly, like it wasn't sure winter was really done. The snow melted in patches, revealing dead grass and mud underneath. Creeks swelled with runoff. The air lost its knife edge and became merely cold instead of lethal. On the first day warm enough to work outside without freezing, a rider appeared carrying an official-looking envelope. Evelyn opened it with shaking hands and read the contents twice before she believed them. "It's done," she said. "The land claim, it's approved. It's mine." Rowan looked up from where he'd been repairing a fence. "Free and clear?" "Free and clear." They stood there, the enormity of it sinking in. After everything, the death, the violence, the fear, she had her land back, had a future that didn't involve running or hiding or fighting. "What now?" Rowan asked. Rowan Town. Evelyn looked at the stretching out before them, at the mountains still capped with snow, at the endless sky that seemed to promise anything was possible. "Now we build," she said. They started with the essentials, a new cabin on the old foundation, a barn for animals they didn't have yet, fences to mark boundaries that finally meant something. Cooper and Margaret helped when they could. Other homesteaders appeared, having heard about the fight against Halden, wanting to be part of something that had stood against corruption and won. Slowly, the valley came back to life. Noah regained his strength and threw himself into the work with determination that surprised everyone. He followed Rowan everywhere, learning to build, to hunt, to survive. One evening, Evelyn found them sitting together on the porch of the half-finished cabin, watching the sun set. "What are you two talking about?" she asked. "Rowan's teaching me to shoot," Noah said. "He is he?" "Boy should know how to defend himself," Rowan said. "He's 8 years old." "I was shooting at 6. Evelyn shook her head but didn't argue. The world was what it was. Better Noah learned from someone who'd keep him safe. She sat down between them, and they watched the light fade from the sky together. 3 people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and somehow made something good out of it. "Miss Evelyn," Noah said eventually. "Yeah? Is Rowan going to stay, like forever?" Evelyn glanced at Rowan. He was looking at her, his expression open in a way it rarely was. "I don't know," she said honestly. "You'd have to ask him." Noah turned to Rowan. "Are you?" Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "If you'll have me." "I'll have you," Noah said immediately. "That's 1 vote." Rowan's eyes stayed on Evelyn. "What about you?" She thought about everything that had brought them here, the storm, the violence, the fear. Thought about Tom and the life she'd lost. Thought about the future she hadn't dared imagine until now. "Ask me properly," she said. Rowan stood and pulled something from his pocket, a ring, simple and unadorned, made from a bent nail that he'd somehow worked into a circle. "It's not much," he said, "but it's what I've got. It's perfect." He knelt in front of her, this dangerous man made gentle by love, and said, "Evelyn Hart, will you marry me?" She took the ring and slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "Yes," she said. Noah cheered. Rowan pulled her close and kissed her while the last light died in the west and the stars came out overhead. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Evelyn felt like she was home. They married 3 weeks later in Cooper's rebuilt house, with Margaret as witness and Noah standing between them like he belonged there. There was no minister, just Cooper reading words from a book he'd salvaged from the fire. Something about commitment and choosing each other every day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Evelyn wore the same dress she'd worn to marry Tom, because it was the only dress she owned. Rowan wore a clean shirt Margaret had mended for him, his hair combed back, his beard trimmed. He looked uncomfortable in a way that had nothing to do with the clothes and everything to do with standing in front of people and making promises. But when Cooper asked if he'd have Evelyn as his wife, Rowan's voice didn't waver. "I will." And when Cooper turned to Evelyn, she looked at this man who'd saved her life 6 times, who'd nearly died for a child who wasn't his, who'd stopped running because she'd asked him to stay. "I will," she said. They kissed, and Noah clapped, and Margaret cried quietly into her handkerchief. Cooper produced a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving, and they drank to new beginnings, to survival, to the stubborn refusal to let the world break them. That night, lying beside Rowan in the cabin they were building together, Evelyn stared at the unfinished ceiling and tried to remember the last time she'd felt this particular combination of terrified and hopeful. "You're thinking too loud," Rowan said beside her. "Can't help it." "What about?" "Everything. What happens next? Whether we can actually make this work." He rolled onto his side to face her. "We already made it work. Everything else is just details. Those details include feeding ourselves, keeping a roof overhead, and raising a kid who's already seen too much." "Yeah. That doesn't scare you?" "Everything scares me," Rowan said quietly. "But I'm doing it anyway." Evelyn reached out and traced the scar above his eye, the one he'd gotten fighting Halden's men. "You ever regret it? Staying?" "Not once." Not even when you nearly froze to death getting medicine for Noah? Especially not then. His hand covered hers. You know why? Why? Because that's the first time in 5 years I did something that mattered. Not for money, not for survival, just because it was the right thing to do. He paused. I forgot what that felt like. Evelyn's throat tightened. You're a better man than you think you are. I'm a man trying to be better. There's a difference. Maybe, but you're trying. That counts. He pulled her close, and they lay tangled together, listening to Noah's quiet breathing from the loft above, listening to the wind move through the valley that was finally, truly theirs. Spring turned into summer, and the work never stopped. They finished the cabin by late May, 4 rooms instead of 1, a real kitchen, a loft for Noah that was his alone. Rowan built furniture with the same efficiency he did everything else, each piece rough but solid. The barn went up next, and with it came livestock. Cooper traded them 2 goats and a half-wild cow that Rowan spent a week gentling. They acquired chickens from a passing trader, 3 hens and a rooster that Noah immediately named and treated like pets. You can't name something you might have to eat, Evelyn told him. Why not? Because it makes it harder. Good, Noah said firmly. Should be hard. The kid had a point. By midsummer, the valley was starting to look like something other than a battlefield. Fences marked clean boundaries, crops pushed up through soil that had been turned and fertilized. The creek that ran through Evelyn's property, the same water that Halden had killed for, now irrigated neat rows of corn and beans. Other homesteaders started arriving, drawn by word that this was land where people stood their ground and won. They built houses on the valley's edges, formed a loose community bound by shared experience and mutual defense. One evening, a man rode up to the cabin leading a string of horses. He was young, maybe 25, with a nervous energy that reminded Evelyn of a cornered animal. Help you? Rowan asked, stepping onto the porch. Looking for Rowan Kane, the man said. You found him. The man dismounted and pulled an envelope from his saddlebag. I'm supposed to deliver this. It's from the territorial governor's office. Evelyn's stomach clenched. Official letters never meant anything good. Rowan opened the envelope and read in silence. His expression gave nothing away. What is it? Evelyn asked when she couldn't stand the waiting anymore. They want me to testify. About what? Halden's operation. Turns out he wasn't just grabbing land here. He had schemes running all over Colorado territory. They're building a case against his partners, the mining companies, the politicians who took bribes. They want me to talk about what I saw when I worked for them. The messenger shifted nervously. Sir, there's more. The governor's offering a position. Deputy Territorial Marshal, specifically assigned to investigate land fraud. Evelyn stared. They want you to be a lawman? Apparently. The same people who had a bounty on you 6 months ago now want to give you a badge. Politics, Rowan said flatly. I know where the bodies are buried. Literally. That makes me useful. Are you going to do it? He looked at her, then at the valley they'd built, then back at the letter. I don't know. The messenger cleared his throat. They need an answer within the week. I'm staying in Blackstone if you want to send word. After he left, Rowan and Evelyn sat on the porch watching the sun set. Noah was inside doing the reading lessons Evelyn had started teaching him, his voice stumbling over words in the way of someone learning to see the world differently. You should do it, Evelyn said finally. I should stay here. Help you run this place. We can run it fine without you for a few months, and if you can stop what Halden was doing from happening to other people, it's not that simple. Why not? Rowan's jaw tightened. Because I'll have to testify about things I did, things I'm not proud of. And when I do, you'll hear it. Noah will hear it. Everyone will know exactly what kind of man I was. I already know what kind of man you were, Evelyn said quietly. I'm married to the kind of man you are now. There's a difference. What if there's not? What if I'm just fooling myself, thinking I can be something other than... Stop. She turned to face him fully. You rode into a blizzard to save a boy who wasn't yours. You fought men you used to work with to protect people you barely knew. You gave up running because I asked you to stay. That's not the same man who worked for Halden, and you know it. Rowan looked away. I killed people, Evelyn. A lot of people. Some of them probably didn't deserve it. And now you have a chance to make sure fewer people die. To use what you know to stop men like Halden before they can do what he did. She took his hand. That doesn't erase what you did before. Nothing can. But it means something. It has to. He was quiet for a long time. Then, what if I fail? Then you fail trying to do the right thing, which is better than succeeding at doing nothing. That got something almost like a smile out of him. When did you get so wise? About the same time I married an idiot who thinks he's still the man he was 5 years ago. This time he actually laughed. He sent word to the messenger the next morning. 2 weeks later, Rowan left for Denver with a saddlebag full of documents and a head full of memories he'd spent years trying to forget. Evelyn stood in the yard and watched him ride away, feeling the same sick fear she'd felt when Tom died, the certainty that someone she cared about was leaving and might not come back. Noah appeared beside her. He'll be okay. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. He promised. The boy's hand slipped into hers. And Rowan doesn't break promises. Evelyn squeezed his hand and hoped he was right. Rowan was gone for 3 months. During that time, Evelyn threw herself into the work with an intensity that worried Margaret. She worked from dawn until she literally couldn't stand anymore, then collapsed into bed only to wake before sunrise and start again. "You're going to kill yourself," Margaret said one afternoon, finding Evelyn trying to repair the barn roof alone. "I'm fine." "You're exhausted, and you're doing the work of 3 people. Someone has to." Margaret climbed up beside her and took the hammer from her hands. "Someone does, but not you alone. Cooper and I can help. So can the Hendersons and the Pratts. That's what community means." Evelyn's shoulders sagged. "I just need to keep moving. If I stop, I start thinking about whether he's coming back? About whether he's alive." Margaret's expression softened. "He's alive, and he's coming back. That man didn't survive 5 years on the run just to get killed testifying in a courtroom. You don't know that. I know men, and I know Cain would walk through hell itself to get back to you and that boy." She handed the hammer back. "But until he does, you need to pace yourself. Because if you work yourself to death, what's he coming back to?" The words hit harder than Evelyn wanted to admit. She climbed down from the roof and let Margaret help her finish the work, and for the first time in weeks, she went to bed before midnight. Letters arrived sporadically. Rowan's handwriting was rough but legible, his words careful and sparse. He was alive. The testimony was ongoing. The case was bigger than anyone had realized. Dozens of officials implicated, fortunes built on stolen land and murdered homesteaders. "It's bad," he wrote in one letter. "Worse than I thought. But they're listening, and people are going to pay for what they did." In another, "I miss you, both of you. Tell Noah I'll teach him to track when I get home." And in the last one, before he went silent for 6 weeks, "If something happens to me, the land is yours free and clear. I made sure of it. Take care of each other." Evelyn read that letter a dozen times, looking for hidden meaning, for reassurance that everything would be fine. She found neither. Then on a cold morning in late September, a rider appeared on the horizon. Evelyn's heart stopped. She knew that silhouette, knew the way he sat a horse, knew the set of his shoulders even from half a mile away. Rowan was home. She ran to meet him, not caring how it looked, not caring about anything except the fact that he was alive and whole and here. He dismounted and caught her as she crashed into him, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "You're okay," she said against his chest. "You're okay." "I'm okay." "I thought, when you stopped writing, they had me in protective custody, couldn't send letters." His arms tightened. "I'm sorry." Noah came tearing out of the cabin and hit Rowan at a full run, wrapping his arms around both of them. Rowan ruffled the boy's hair and lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. "You get taller while I was gone?" Rowan asked. "Maybe." "Definitely. Look at you." They went inside and Evelyn made coffee while Rowan settled into a chair like he wasn't sure he was allowed to stay. He looked thinner, more tired, older somehow. "How'd it go?" she asked. "They convicted 18 people, politicians, company men, land brokers, Halden's whole network." He paused. "And they offered me the marshal position permanent." Evelyn's hand stilled on the coffee pot. "What'd you say?" "I said I needed to talk to my wife first. She poured the coffee and sat across from him, studying his face. Do you want to do it? Part of me does. The part that wants to make sure what happened here doesn't happen somewhere else. He met her eyes. But part of me just wants to stay here and build a life that doesn't involve violence. Those don't have to be different things. How do you figure? You take the job. You work it for a few months a year when they need you. The rest of the time, you're here. Evelyn reached across the table and took his hand. We manage. We make it work. That's asking a lot of you. So, you asked a lot when you stopped running. I asked a lot when I said yes. Marriage is asking a lot and doing it anyway. Rowan's thumb traced circles on her palm. You sure? I'm sure I don't want you wondering 10 years from now if you should have done more. I'm sure I married a man who gives a damn about right and wrong. And I'm sure we can handle a few months apart if it means fewer people lose everything the way we almost did. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, I'll do it. Noah, who'd been listening from the corner, spoke up. Does this mean you'll have a badge? Yeah. Can I see it? Rowan pulled a silver star from his pocket and tossed it to the boy. Noah caught it and turned it over in his hands, his eyes wide. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen, he breathed. Don't lose it. They'll make me pay for a new one. I won't. I promise. Noah pinned it to his own shirt and stood up straighter. How do I look? Like trouble, Rowan said. But he was smiling. That night, after Noah had finally been convinced to go to bed, Evelyn and Rowan sat on the porch and watched stars appear in the darkening sky. I meant what I said in that letter, Rowan said quietly. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, Rowan, she turned to face him. I know you think you're still the man who has to prepare for the worst, but you're allowed to hope for the best too. Hope doesn't keep people alive. Maybe not, but it keeps them living instead of just surviving. She leaned against him. And I'm tired of just surviving. His arm came around her shoulders. Yeah, me too. They sat that way until the cold drove them inside. Two people who'd learned that love wasn't about perfect circumstances or guaranteed outcomes. It was about choosing each other in the middle of imperfect circumstances and uncertain outcomes, and building something anyway. The years passed in the way years do when you're not paying attention, fast and slow all at once, each season bringing its own challenges and small victories. Rowan took the marshal position and worked it the way Evelyn had suggested, gone for a few months each year, home the rest. When he was gone, she ran the property with Noah's help and the support of the community they'd built. When he was home, they worked side by side, expanding the operation, buying more land, building something bigger than either of them could have managed alone. Noah grew like a weed, shooting up until he was almost as tall as Rowan by the time he turned 15. He learned to track, to shoot, to read the weather and the land. He also learned to read books, to write clearly, to think beyond the valley's boundaries. I want to go to school, he announced one evening at dinner. Real school, in Denver. Evelyn's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. That's expensive. I know, but I've been saving, and Rowan said he'd help. She looked at Rowan, who shrugged. Kid's smart. Be a waste not to give him a chance. He's only 15. I was working full-time at 12, Rowan said. He's ready. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to keep Noah close where she could protect him. But she looked at the boy, not a boy anymore, really, but a young man with his mother's determination and a future spread out before him like an open road, and knew she couldn't hold him back. All right, she said, but you come home summers, and you write every week. Noah's face split into a grin. I promise. He left for Denver that fall, and the house felt too quiet without him. Evelyn caught herself setting 3 places at dinner, caught herself listening for his footsteps overhead. He'll be fine, Rowan said one night, finding her staring at Noah's empty chair. I know. Then why do you look like someone died? Because he grew up and I missed it. Her voice cracked. One day he was 8 years old and calling for his mother in his sleep. Now he's gone, and I don't know when he stopped being a child. Rowan pulled her into his arms. He stopped when he had to, same as we all do. That's not comforting. It's true, though. She leaned into him and let herself grieve the passage of time, the loss of the little boy Noah had been. But she also felt pride in the young man he was becoming, strong, smart, kind in ways the world usually beat out of people. The letters came every week like clockwork. Noah wrote about his classes, about the city, about ideas that seemed too big for the page. He was thriving. And 3 years later, he came home with a degree in law and a plan to open homesteaders against the kind of land grabs that had nearly destroyed them. Someone has to, he said when Evelyn asked why. Might as well be someone who knows what it costs. He set up his office in Blackstone and took on clients who couldn't pay, funded by the cases where he could charge. Within a year, he'd earned a reputation as the lawyer who didn't back down, who'd fight land companies and corrupt officials with the same intensity Rowan had once fought with guns. Evelyn watched him work and saw pieces of everyone who'd shaped him. His mother's stubbornness, Rowan's refusal to quit, her own determination to protect what mattered. "You did good," Rowan said one night after Noah had left following dinner. "We did good," Evelyn corrected. "Yeah, we did." More years passed, the valley filled with families, with children who'd never known what it was like to live in fear of men like Halden. Cooper and Margaret grew old gracefully, their rebuilt house a gathering place for anyone who needed advice or shelter. Rowan's hair went fully gray, and the old injuries started catching up to him. He moved slower, worked shorter days, spent more time teaching younger deputies than doing the work himself. "I'm getting old," he said one morning, watching his hands shake while he tried to button his shirt. "We both are," Evelyn said, crossing the room to help him. "Yeah, but I had plans to die young and good-looking. This wasn't part of it." She laughed despite herself. "Sorry to disappoint. You never have." He caught her hand and held it. Not once. They were in their early 60s when Rowan finally retired from marshal work for good. His body couldn't handle the travel anymore, couldn't handle the long hours or the physical demands. "What are you going to do with yourself?" Evelyn asked. "Thought I'd try just living, see how that feels." "And if you hate it, then I'll complain a lot and you'll tell me to shut up." He smiled. Same as always. They settled into a new rhythm, quieter, slower, but no less full. They worked the land that had cost them so much and given them everything. They watched Noah build a life defending people who couldn't defend themselves. They grew old together in a way neither of them had ever expected to have the chance to do. One spring morning, 23 years after the blizzard that had brought Rowan to Evelyn's door, he found her standing at Tom's grave. She'd kept it maintained all these years, a simple stone marker on a hill overlooking the valley. She visited it sometimes, not out of lingering grief, but out of respect for the life she'd had before everything changed. "You okay?" Rowan asked, coming to stand beside her. "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how different things could have been. If the storm hadn't come. If you hadn't knocked on my door, if I'd turned you away." Rowan was quiet for a moment. "You ever regret not turning me away?" "Never. Not once." She looked up at him. "You?" "I regret a lot of things. But staying." He shook his head. "That's the one thing I got right." They stood together in comfortable silence, two people who'd survived impossible odds and built something lasting from the wreckage. "I'm glad you knocked," Evelyn said finally. "I'm glad you answered." The sun was setting when Rowan pulled something from his pocket, a small box, worn smooth from years of handling. "What's that?" Evelyn asked. "Something I've been meaning to give you." He opened the box to reveal a ring, not the bent nail he'd proposed with, but a proper band, silver and simple. "Rowan, I know you've got the nail, but I figured after 20-some years you deserve something that wasn't improvised." He took her hand. "Evelyn Kane, will you stay married to me?" She laughed, tears stinging her eyes. "You already asked that question. I'm asking it again. Every day for the rest of our lives, if you'll let me." "Then every day for the rest of our lives?" "The answer's yes." He slid the ring onto her finger beside the bent nail she'd never taken off. It fit perfectly. They walked back to the house as the last light faded from the sky, hand in hand, two people who'd learned that survival wasn't about avoiding the storm. It was about finding someone to weather it with and building a life from whatever was left standing after. Inside, Evelyn lit the lamps and started dinner. Rowan set the table, 2 places now, just them, the way it had been in the beginning. But the house felt full anyway, filled with memories of everyone who'd sat at this table, everyone who'd been shaped by the choices made here. "Think Noah's coming for dinner Sunday?" Rowan asked. "He said he would, and he's bringing someone." "Someone?" "A woman, says it's serious." Rowan smiled. Good for him. They ate together, talking about nothing important. The weather, the livestock, the repairs that still needed doing. The comfortable conversation of two people who'd been together so long that silence wasn't awkward and words weren't necessary. After dinner, they sat on the porch like they had 1,000 times before, watching stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. You know what I realized? Evelyn said. What? The storm that almost killed us, that brought you here, that started everything. It wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to us. No, it was the best. She leaned against him. Because without it, I never would have found you. Noah never would have found a home. We never would have built any of this. Rowan's arm came around her shoulders, familiar and solid. Funny how that works. What? How the thing that almost destroys you can end up saving you, if you're stubborn enough to survive it. Evelyn thought about that, about the storm, about Halden, about all the moments when they could have given up and didn't, about the choice to keep fighting even when fighting seemed impossible. We were stubborn, she said. We were terrified. That too. Still are sometimes, but we do it anyway. Yeah, Rowan said quietly. We do. They sat together until the cold drove them inside, and later, lying in the darkness with Rowan's breathing steady beside her, Evelyn thought about all the lives that had intersected in this valley. Tom, who'd built the foundation. Noah's mother, who'd taught her son to survive. Cooper and Margaret, who'd fought when they could have run. Rowan, who'd stopped running when every instinct told him to keep going. And herself, a woman who'd lost everything and chosen to build again, who'd opened her door to a dangerous stranger and found a partner instead of a threat. None of it had been easy. None of it had been guaranteed, but all of it had been worth it. She reached out in the darkness and found Rowan's hand. He squeezed back without waking, and Evelyn closed her eyes and let herself believe in tomorrow. Because that's what survival looked like. Not the absence of fear or pain or loss, but the choice to keep going despite them. The choice to build, to love, to hope, even when hope seemed like the stupidest thing in the world. They'd survived the storm. Everything else was just living. And after everything they'd been through, that was more than enough. The valley slept under stars that had witnessed it all. The violence, the rebuilding, the slow transformation from battlefield to home. And in the cabin on the hill, two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances slept peacefully, knowing that tomorrow would bring work and challenges and the 1,000 small difficulties of life. But they'd face it together. They'd survived worse. And they'd keep surviving, keep building, keep choosing each other every single day until there were no more days left to choose. That was the promise they'd made in Cooper's house 23 years ago. And unlike so many other things in this hard country, it was a promise they'd kept. The storm that had nearly destroyed them had instead become the foundation of everything they'd built. And in the end, that made all the difference.